Welcome to the No Script Show, where if you are listening to this from outside of prison, you're probably smarter than the average SoundCloud rapper. I'm Whiskey Wotan, and with me I've got, as always, one of my co-hosts, the big man, Conscious Caracal. How's it going, bro?
Hey, man, thanks for having me on. Like I said before we started, a lot of things to cover, and thank you for bringing up the idea that we need to do another show. I think it's necessary to let the people know. And as I said, your audience is very picky when it comes to audio quality and the quality of the show. But as you said, we're bringing this to them for free. And if this is if this is a free car that you can win, or the free car that you get, the No Script Show is, in my mind, definitely a Lamborghini.
Appreciate that, bro. So I actually want to take a shot at a supposedly light topic first. Because it actually relates to my initial joke, and that is SoundCloud rappers, specifically one rapper by the name of Tekashi 6ix9ine. Do you know the saga of the snitch? Okay, for those of you who don't know, this is going to be quick, but
he's the Karen of rappers.
He's the Karen of rappers, but I like his ethos because he's a guy with an Asian name who raps about hood nigger shit. Even though he says the N-word way more than most people I know, including myself, but he's Hispanic. So he's like a combo of everything. Like he's got Americanese, a combo of everything. So some new developments in the saga of Tekashi 6ix9ine. So Tekashi 6ix9ine, quick recap, like elevator pitch recap. He was a rapper who, from Brooklyn, New York, who ran with Treyway, I believe it's a blood associated gang, and he ran with them in that they offered him protection and their street cred so that his music would become more popular, and in exchange they got the benefit of being the sort of entourage of a rapper that was blowing up, right? So that's particularly where we last left Tekashi 6ix9ine. And, actually, no, that's not where we left it, because he decided the coolest thing possible would be to keep talking about fucking crimes that the Treyway Bloods were perpetrating in his music. Now, you could do the defense of creative license, and it doesn't mean he actually did it, but some very specific details were let out. Long story short, a bunch of Treyway guys got caught up. And he was caught up in it as an associate, of course. And because he's not a real street nigger, when it came down to it, he snitched like crazy. And now Tekashi 6ix9ine is out of prison. Now, why do you need to care why Tekashi 6ix9ine is out of prison? Because, well, as it turns out, Tekashi 6ix9ine is still Tekashi 6ix9ine. And he started off with one of the mayors in a town in California saying, we are going to offer rewards to anyone who turns in their neighbors who are breaking quarantine rules. And Tekashi 6ix9ine, who is now on house arrest, promptly commented on this and said, anybody needs some help, I'm here. Real smart, Tekashi. But that's not where Tekashi's story ends. Tekashi 6ix9ine really, really enjoyed the practice of hitting on other guys' girlfriends and baby mamas and taking them on dates and shit. And now Tekashi 6ix9ine has had a video emerge of him and a rival rapper taking a video of him taking his girlfriend out for a ride, Tekashi's girlfriend out for a ride, and apparently a certain sleepover occurred with Tekashi 6ix9ine's baby mama. So now the wheel turns. Also, he's not paying child support. So basically, Tekashi 6ix9ine is still Tekashi 6ix9ine, still snitching, and the loser in this equation is his kids. So the moral of the story here, kids, is stop listening to SoundCloud rappers.
And that snitching karma is going to catch up to you, dude.
Exactly. So that's the update on Tekashi 6ix9ine, everybody's favorite snitch.
But actually, in a little bit of tech news, and seeing as you've mentioned Spotify, I mean, what are your thoughts on Joe Rogan being exclusively Spotify now? I think he's moving at the end of the year to Spotify exclusively. Did you see that story?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that'll be one of the biggest, shall we say, wheel breaking moments for YouTube. When somebody like Joe Rogan leaves, it's like Yeah, dude.
You're like the biggest podcast in the world, or one of the biggest podcasts in the world, and
Exactly.
you're moving to a platform that's only now experimenting with video.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think Joe Rogan might be. I don't know. Maybe it's just money, or maybe he's seeing a change in the wind. Maybe YouTube is just becoming too corporate, but it doesn't mean Spotify is like this paragon of anarchy and alternative media. But I don't know. I think it's a combination of factors. I think it's going to shake up the establishment quite a bit, because YouTube has had this amazing luxury of being just this monopoly in regards to the video sharing site. I mean, if you think about online video streaming, so not live streaming specifically, but just watching videos online, YouTube is your go-to guy. But I'm looking forward to the day that there's a bit more competition for them, because what I'm seeing happen on YouTube is very concerning and very irritating for me as a very long time user on the site.
Oh, yeah.
The corporatization of the site, where back in the day on the front page, you'd see videos of like some handheld footage of two bums fighting in the street. And now on the front page, you just get Will Smith making food, or Jimmy Fallon talking from his room, or like all these very corporate and like celebrity type content. But for example, I highly doubt Will Smith really wants a YouTube channel, and I think the bigger, much more plausible theory is that YouTube just said, "Dude, create your own channel, and we'll make it worth your time."
Yeah, I think so too. I really do think so. I could imagine a day where YouTube is pretty much dead, where something else has taken its place completely, right. and channels have just, even big channels internationally, locally, yours, any other podcasts, where you just delete all your shit and just move to a new platform. I could see that happening.
Yeah, dude, but like I said, as a long-time YouTuber, you could see that collapse of views. So the majority of my views used to come from the YouTube search algorithm. But nowadays, that only makes up about 2 to 3% of my views. So I've actually done experiments where I literally copy and paste the titles of some of my videos that are more obscure into the search engine, and I only appear like 20th on the list. That's because of YouTube's priority creators program, where they have certain priority creators that if you search for certain words or keywords or content, those people show up. And especially for someone like me in the news and politics section, that means I'm going to be crowded out by the likes of MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, News 24. They've all got their privileged position of being priority creators. And like I tell a lot of people on the right, that say like, oh, Fox News is the right-wing network, and this is where we get our conservative, anti-establishment views. Riddle me this: why are they on YouTube's corporate and priority creators list? Why are they also listed, like given preferential treatment by this leftist big tech? I would just like an answer there. In terms of, I've always viewed Fox News as just another corporate entity that realized they can monetize conservative angles on news, just like the left-wing networks in America realize they can monetize a left-wing angle on news, like, for example, MSNBC, which is, I don't think anyone would argue that they're not biased. So, but my central point is Fox News isn't some savior or alternative to the legacy media. They are part of it. They are deep in it.
This show is more sort of a renegade left, or rather right wing sort of show than Fox News. But anyway, that is it. Oh, actually, I have 2 more tech topics. Actually, since we're on the subject of tech, and the first one is geospace related, and the second one is actually COVID related, because apparently that's what we have to talk about now all the fucking time. Yeah. So I'm going to go with the space one first.
Yeah, man, dive in.
And okay. So there was this news article about how we may have detected a parallel universe, right? Scientists may, and I haven't read the study of it at all. I'll admit that, but I did. It did inspire me to speak about some of my favorite scientists, Isaac Arthur's recent work on parallel universes and all that. And I'm not going to spoil his whole presentation, but he did for me sort of explain some very critical concepts when it comes to multiverses and infinite universes. And one of the main ones was the difference between a truly infinite universe and then a functionally infinite universe. So there's a possibility that our universe is infinitely large and it just keeps going and going and going forever. But there's also the possibility that it's functionally infinite. And what that means is that there is, because there is a finite number of permutation of particles, one of the big parallel universe possibilities for parallel universes in our universe is that there's a finite combination of particles, permutations. It's mind-bogglingly large, but it's still finite. So the whole concept of things that go on forever, if something is infinite, if it goes on forever, then of course something that is infinitely small but is not quite zero will eventually happen. So a parallel universe in our universe where there's multiple U's would be where if the universe has so many particles that eventually you get to another point in the universe where it's just a repeat of that combination of particles in the same universe, and therefore there's a repeat U. So the difference between a functionally infinite universe and a truly infinite universe would be a functionally infinite universe is a universe so large that even though it's finite, and even though there's a couple of repeats of this pattern of U or your whole galaxy or whatever, it's so large that the repeats are actually so numerous that to you there is no plausible way for you to check if this is really infinite, because to check something is infinite, you'd have to keep checking forever. So a functionally infinite universe is just as good as a truly infinite universe in that if the universe is big enough for us, this is what scientists mean by functionally infinite. If the universe is big enough, it could be so big that we could never check, or that we could make sample sizes so large that no matter how large the sample size, the actual finite universe is bigger. And so we would satisfy ourselves from a research perspective that it is infinite. So in this context, truly infinite and functionally infinite are one and the same. And to sort of illustrate that, there's this example on infinite timelines where in quantum theory, you can actually snap your fingers and at the exact same time, something could happen on the quantum scale, that particles magically arrange themselves, that a gold bar appears on your desk. And then you could do that again and again and again, and you keep getting gold bars. And then you could call some scientists and they could watch this happen over and over again with enough experiments to the point where they're like, okay, well, we don't understand the physical process, but we just have to accept that you have the power to create gold bars by the snap of your fingers. Meanwhile, it just so happens that you are in a universe where at that tiny percentage chance, every time you snap your fingers, a gold bar would happen. So that's right. Yeah, that's one thing.
Right. Dude, it just reminded me, have you ever heard of the Library of Babel?
Exactly, yes.
Dude, that site is a mind-blowing thing. So just for people that don't know, it's pretty much a site that contains every possible combination of letters. So if you search a phrase on that site, it will take you to a page where that phrase exists. So, for example, I can take a paragraph from one of my opinion pieces and it will be on one of those pages. So you could pretty much unravel the universe and uncover the greatest works of art within that on that website. You could have any type of alternative history will be there in some type of form. And you would also have an outline of every possible future for every person alive today. I mean, the way that you will die will be somewhere on that website. And I know you're familiar with it, so you know what I'm talking about. It's really mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah, it is. And that's the whole concept behind incredibly large sort of possibilities that no matter how, incredibly small possibilities that no matter how small that possibility on infinite timelines, and the Library of Babel is an example of sort of infinite timelines where, infinite timelines where it's just every permutation means that eventually you will write that book or whatever. That's how you die. So, it's a good example of that. So,
quite coincidentally, the first thing when I found out about that library was the first phrase I searched to test the hypothesis that anything is possible on that website. I typed in Major Van Zyl and General Moja sit on their stoop enjoying a glass of whiskey.
What? Seriously?
Yeah, it was there.
Okay, I have to check that out, but after the show.
Yeah, I mean, every possible combination of words is on that website. So naturally, I mean, I wanted to test it, and it's there somewhere on that on one of those pages. I found it.
Wow. Okay. Cool. So that's the one thing, and then the other side. Yeah. So that's a cool. It's a really cool thing with this whole possibility of it, because it could just be we're just detecting a very far away part of the universe in our same universe still, and it's just a repeat of the pattern. And it for our functional sake, it's still the same. So yeah, that's the one thing. But I would really highly recommend you check out the Isaac Arthur sort of video on parallel universes. So the other tech thing I wanted to talk about, and I actually wanted to give a shout out to dude that DM'd me on Twitter, actually, Skunk Hunt 42, aka Skank Hunt 42, I think it is. Anyway, I hope you're listening, bro. Anyway, he directed me to a very cool research paper, as you know, being in STEM, and it's a research paper named "An Epidemiological Model for the Spread of COVID-19 of COVID-19, a South African Case Study." And it has to do with, epidemiology and predictive models. So, it's sort of in my ballpark of which I operate in terms of predictive models. And I appreciate that he sent me this actual peer. I assume they wrote this in some sort of LaTeX template. But anyway, I took a look at the abstract and some of the methodology and some of the mathematical models of this thing. And they basically compared us to Italy, Germany, and Italy, Germany, and South Korea, partially because the N numbers are close enough. The N numbers being the total population. So Germany is 82.393 mil. We're at 57.78 mil. South Korea 51.64 mil, and Italy 60.43 million. So when I looked at the study, whenever I look at a study, one of the first thing, and you were there actually, I think one of the times I mentioned this was when you and myself and Mr. Roots sat down for some dinner. And one of the things I mentioned is that what I really hate is when people sort of quote studies, and I look at the study, I'm like, this is such demonstrably bad science. The data is horrific, or it's just so badly constructed, or anything like that. And I'm happy to say, I haven't really, really super scrutinized this, but from what I've looked at so far, this study is not a case of that. And basically what they did is they took the SEI model for epidemiology. So the SEI model is I think it's susceptible, exposed, infected, SEIR, infected or resistant model, and they built a model on top of that called the SEI-QRDP model, and that model is susceptible, exposed, infectious, quarantined, recovered. Hold on, let me find. Actually, I've actually got it in front of me. Susceptible, exposed, infectious, quarantined, recovered, deceased, insusceptible model. And basically what the model says, I won't go into the math of it, but it's highly mutable on the R factor, which is the reproduction factor. But when they actually built this model in terms of fitting the data, and by the way, the data was taken from what I consider to be a fairly reliable source, some John Hopkins numbers there, and I think it was the I think it was the human data source or something to that effect. I can't remember the exact name, but I'm looking at the models right now, and what happens is when they actually look at the report, like in the long term, the models kind of spaz out a little initially, but when they take into account certain R values, the model sort of sits us at somewhere in the middle of anywhere from predicting, and this is a fitting model in terms of data, so I believe it's ultimate prediction. Total casualties or deceased somewhere in the total number of 10,000 to 70,000 with an average value of about 22,000. So the United States now, I think, is sitting on, I don't know how many tens of thousands dead. Casualties?
It's around 100,000, if I remember.
100,000. Now, us, so let's say the absolute highest end of this model, 70,000, which is a fair amount relative to a population of 57 million, as opposed to the United States, which is like, 300 million? But I don't think 70,000 is that bad, considering and I know any death is a tragedy, that bad, considering A, our horrific HIV and TB infection rate, and B, our horrific state of public health. So actually, this model, based on the data I'm looking at, is good news, and it's well-constructed study. If anyone wants me to send it to them, I will DM the show. But yeah, I think from that, so what I'm saying now, I'm not an epidemiologist, but I know about mathematics and predictive models, which is what they're building this around. And I'm also concurring with this study and saying, hey, this is actually good news, really good news.
Well, let me just give some context to the audience, and I don't think this is going to blow your mind, but in 2016, 124,000 South Africans died of tuberculosis.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
So just some perspective. We didn't lock down the country. We still lose about, let's take a conservative number and say, well, maybe 2016 was a bad year. Let's take a conservative number between 70,000 and 100,000 people, South Africans die every year of tuberculosis, and we don't have a lockdown because of it. Why?
I remember 2-3 years ago on the radio, somebody was mentioning something to the effect of the total road deaths for South Africa in the last year. And they're like, this is roughly equal to the total number of deaths the United Kingdom's military has suffered in the Middle East in 5 years. We have that many from road deaths in 1 year.
Yeah, it's insane, dude. And you have to take into account, if we take the factor into account that South Africa only has 60 million people, 124,000 is a pretty large chunk of that in regards to proportions. But yeah, I just find it very strange how people, I can pretty much guarantee that more, and this is only going on my own educated guess, that more people are going to die because of the economic fallout of this in South Africa than people are going to die of COVID-19. But that's only my prediction.
Well, and violent crime, from economic.
Of course.
So yeah, shout out to Skunk Hunt 42. I like that he's actually got Kyle's dad from that episode fucking trolling as his Avi. That's top class, dude. If you're ever in a bar in Pretoria, I think you're from Tux. I'm not sure, but I think you are. Hit me up and we'll chat. Although keep in mind, I do carry concealed weapons on me at most times, so fuck around and find out. I'm just playing. But seriously, So that was my main tech stuff. That's in my mind at the moment.
I think another thing that we wanted to talk about was the big debate.
Is it about the national anthem and the Kifness, or your big debate?
No, my big debate, dude.
Yeah, man. Let's talk about it.
All right. So just a quick introduction. So we had a debate on Politik this week, Monday, on the topic of individualism versus communitarianism, or basically liberalism versus conservatism to a rough extent. And it was between me and Ernst Roots in one team, and Mr. Herman Pretorius and Martin van Staden in the other team. representing the Institute of Race Relations and Free Market Foundation specifically. And the debate went well for me. I enjoyed it. I thought it was excellent. I saw Mr. Moja here was also in the chat and in the comments dropping some salt, but a good type of salt, not an angry type of salt.
Just a little bants.
Yeah, some bants. Yeah, some salty bants. But there was some angry salt in the chat, but not from people that agree with us.
Yeah. So, well, look, just to be clear, my stance was obviously I had a certain amount of bias. Because, well, I mean, my stance going in was the old Setswana saying, which is motu ke motu, kabatu babang, which means people are people because of other people.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So basically, the crux of the debate was the new South Africa of 1994 was built on liberal principles. It was built on a constitution that was praised by liberals across the world, and liberals and individualists are pretty much interchangeable. And we made the point, me and Adams Roots, that not that liberal or individual rights are just useless and that they should be done away with, but rather that they are insufficient for protecting, for example, cultural minorities, linguistic minorities, and protecting groups in a country where you have a government that clearly shows that they interpret the Constitution in a way that is hostile towards those communities. So that's where the crux of the debate was. And I thought it went well. I think I enjoyed it a lot. And me and Adams Roots also did a post-debate discussion on my channel to talk about it later.
Shout out Team E Squared.
Yeah, man. And yeah, so for me, I think the big thing is, overemphasis on liberal principles in South Africa has pretty much created a lot of the problems that we have today. And I think the question that needs to be answered is not, because I saw a lot of people today, I made a tweet regarding this, and a lot of people responded angrily to it and said, no, but if I was responding to a guy that said, well, if the Nats hadn't done what they had done, we wouldn't have the ethno-nationalist ANC today. And I think that's a very, very narrow way of looking at it, because the ANC was enabled largely by the Constitution, or by people not in 1994 saying, but guys, there's a very big risk that whatever government comes after this is going to be able to interpret the Constitution any way they want. So, and that brings me to the crux of what me and Adams were trying to communicate, and it's practicality versus theory, where in theory, the liberals have a very beautiful theory, a very beautiful story that they tell. But in practice, like I said in one of the remarks that I made, you might have a beautiful theory, but the Mukhweng doesn't care about your beautiful theory. He has a different view on what the Constitution means and what the Constitution needs to achieve in South Africa. And I think that's where the big failing is coming. On paper, liberalism seems fine. It seems like it will. And that was what a lot of minority groups in South Africa were promised. It said, no, you can keep your own schools. You can keep your own churches. We're not going to try and impose any type of cultural imperialism on you. We're not going to try and standardize you. We're not going to try and individualize and atomize you and force you to integrate with anyone that you want. You can do what you want. You can stay where you want, and you can preserve your culture as you want, and we won't just attack it as racist or as exclusionary or whatever. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And I think the best example of that is the Afrikaans universities, where it's just completely been completely destroyed, the idea of public Afrikaans universities. But now the silver lining to that whole story is that the communitarian organizations, not the liberal organizations, are putting a stop to that or actually doing something about it by creating their own universities, like Academia and Soltech by Solidarity. So in the end, it seems that community saves itself and shouldn't rely on the government. And for me, it's just the big crux of it all was that practicality versus theory. I like the liberal theory sounds very nice. That's how I think a lot of people wish the world worked. But unfortunately, that is not the case. The world is much more gritty, made out of people that are willing to exploit things. And that are willing to, for example, take liberal constitutions and interpret them as they wish.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll start off by saying, obviously, I was very much in your guys' corner. I mean, that's why I said that saying as well. Uh, but I will frame it in that there is a very small subset of the more communitarian leaning, sort of more slightly right leaning people who now take this concept and they're like, yeah, so that means all liberals are evil and liberals just fought for the communist ANC to be in power. I'm like, no, most liberals fought for apartheid to end, which is a good thing. Apartheid should have ended. Just FYI, I'll never defend forced segregation. So yes, and no, I don't think liberals are inherently evil, but that's the only context or contrast I'd add to your statements. Otherwise, 100% with you.
It's the best summary of it is the road to hell was paved with good intentions. And I think never in that debate did me and Aaron's frame our opponents as inherently evil or motivated by evil intent. But their ideology and policies in practice, unfortunately, have some very disastrous and sometimes even horrific consequences in regard to the threat that it poses to communities or the threat that it poses to languages. And I just think, and I think that's how a debate should be conducted. And I think that kind of unsettled them to a certain regard. They've been used to debating Marxists, where the Marxists just say, "Well, my big goal today is going to be to prove you're you're an evil racist," and then they just snipe all their vapid arguments like that and pretty much come out to the hero on the other side, and they get a destroyed compilation on the other side. But me and Adams went in here and said, no, we're not, no, we didn't say it directly, but that was our attitude. You could see it in terms of just saying, we're not going to try and convince the audience that you are inherently evil, that your hearts are blackened, that you just want to see humanity destroyed and divided, or not divided, but rather that cultures should be eradicated. I do think our opponents also have virtuous intent, but as we've seen from history, I don't think you can point to a lot of ideologies that have malicious intent. Maybe Marxism you can point to with malicious intent, but I think
that goes for our ideology as well.
Yeah,
a lot of art. Like I said, my thing is, like I said, I agree with everything. Just this shouldn't be, as I said, a small subset of more people, I guess, who are, and I hate this phrase, technically on my side, are now saying, yes, the only reason there's evil in the world is because liberals. I'm like, no, guys, enough with that cringe. No, that's not the reason that this, and there was some useful liberal principles in terms of me as a black man being allowed to be in certain places and have certain relationships and all that. So, but again, 100% on, you guys, for me, I cannot in my mind imagine if the University of Gaborone started teaching solely in English like that. I can't imagine that. That would be
to be inclusive to international students.
No, you're in Botswana. I can't. Even if you go just into the northwest, there's old worms and I'll admit my own bias that I expect this old worm to only speak Afrikaans, and then he greets me in fluent Setswana. I'm like, holy shit. And it's always a good culture shock real quick. But yeah.
And I think the other thing was, and this is this was the foundation of the debate, and unfortunately we wandered off a bit from it, was that this whole thing started on the premise that no, we're not saying, like you just said, they are good liberal principles. I mean, I can't find any fault with the principle of property rights, or freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of religion. That's excellent. That's great. I don't have a problem with it. The premise of the entire debate was that these principles and these things are insufficient, because if you put them in the Constitution, and they are in the South African Constitution, but yet we still ended up with a majoritarian, often flirting with the ethno-nationalist government.
Exactly.
And
that's why I'm on your guys' side.
Yeah, and then I asked, why is that? When all these regulations and checks and balances were there, this Constitution was praised as this great liberal document, but they weren't sufficient. And that's why me and Aaron's made a great tweet today. He made a tweet where he showed the Indian Constitution, which actually has group rights enshrined in it, where they give, for example, just paraphrasing now, the ability for cultural groups to secede if they are not happy with the way things are going in their country. So it's that type of thing that communitarianism advocates, or at least the brand of me and Adams. I mean, I can't speak for all communitarians.
Which I subscribe to as well, like 100%.
I think it can be a great supplement and a great, not alternative, a great supplement and combination with fundamental liberal rights that I think, for example, freedom of speech, property rights, freedom of association, I think those are excellent principles.
Yeah, like that's, I mean, like there was an argument on Twitter of like, double stuffed Oreo cookies and triple stuffed Oreo cookies. And people are like, these are better because they have more cream. And like, it's this whole thing of more liberal rights. I'm like, it's like you say, there's that supplement. And somebody said the reason food is good, case in point, an Oreo cookie, is because of the medley of all the textures and flavors and all that. The reason something could be good would be the medley of some of these liberal rights. But, as you said, I subscribe to the same communitarian principle as you guys. So, like, the reason it could be good, yes, some liberal principles. And again, Adam's Roots bringing up the whole Afrikaans at Stellenbosch and Tux thing. Like, I think that's a perfect, as I said to you, I think that's a perfect example. Oh, sorry, you.
Yeah. But I can understand the confusion.
I'm mixing up my E's and the E squared, but the whole point of that's a perfect example of community rights being impugned without an individual rights being impugned, and thus individual rights aren't sufficient. Because from my perspective, mother tongue education, I mean, I had this whole discussion with Mr. Mashava and all that, like, mother tongue education is a group right because it takes at least two people, which is qualifying as a group, to have mother tongue education. Some person to speak or write the concept, and some person to interpret and understand it. You can't have one person's right to mother tongue education because if it's just one person, nobody else can understand it. So you need at least two. And that's just, one of my, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is that I made a tweet today where I said I was critical of liberalism today. Again, I just made a tweet that I said I can have robust conversations with a lot of oaks with a lot of liberal views that I can have real. I mean, you hold a lot of liberal views, maybe even some that I do not agree with, but you and me can have really real conversations and not be at each other's throats. And try to prove to people outside or whatever, or try to prove that the other person is a bad person. I think that's a horrible perversion of the art of debate, where your goal is to prove that your opponent is a horrible person. I think that is just the most egregious perversion of what debate should be.
I mean, like, case in point. Look, I mean, I know there's. Have you taken the quickest? Was it the quickest political compass test ever? It's like 10, 12 questions. It's a much better version of the political compass. But mine is, and I also took the political compass. I'm still pretty much smack dab in bottom right purple quadrant libertarian, right libertarian quadrant. But like you said, I do hold some liberal views. Like, you know what, guys? I actually don't care if gay people can get married. I really don't. It doesn't affect my marriage. I know a lot of my friends disagree with me and they're like, you're not a real conservative. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm a libertarian. But, that's a good example of one of the more liberal views of mine. I'm like, you know what? Fine. But then I'm also a pretty ardent pro-lifer. So, like you said, different views and all that.
Mm. And, I mean, that's why I don't like labels. That's why I don't have in my bio a label saying what type of thing I am. Because I just don't, because then people put you in a box and then you say something that doesn't match up with that and they say, well, now that means you put X in your bio, you say you're this, but now you just said that. That means you're not really X. So for me, it's just that's too much drama and nitpicking, so I don't put a label there. Like, if I have to adopt a label and you're familiar with this, I'm a fun sailist.
Yeah. Well, I think for the most part, most of your stuff isn't that far off from mine, really.
No, dude, I think we're in the same quadrant. I mean, I've done the political compass test quite a lot, and let's make a liberal observation there. We can pretty much with very strong certainty say we are in the same quadrant.
Mm. Yeah. And there's still a lot of play in that quadrant, like you said, like you and I have had endless stupid conversations. So yeah.
Yeah.
And looking forward to a few more.
Man, this lockdown just needs to end, bro.
Bruh, I saw my local tops. They're like preparing for Monday. It's amazing. They're just.
Dude, I've just been seeing videos of all the trucks. Trucks, bro.
Yeah. And by the way, gang, as a non-smoker, I'm still pissed. No, when I get my fireball on Monday, I'm still going to be pissed. No, this is not enough. No, this is not okay. None of this is fucking okay at all, in my opinion.
Maybe just a final thought there on the debate, and to end it off, and to show that type of diversity of thought that you do have within our circles is now, for example, I made the point in Aaron's as well, is the strange relationship between liberalism and Marxism, where they seem a bit too eager to ally sometimes with the Marxists, and the tendency and trend of liberal organizations becoming more Marxist over time, or being taken over by Marxists. And I named the example of the Black Sash movement that started as a pretty smack dab perfect example of a liberal individualist organization, and now today they are advocating a universal basic income to the government. So it's just an example of that creep and that trend. But then you also have these oaks that say, yes, that means liberals and Marxists are the same, or all these liberals are just Marxists. I'm like, no, that's also not true. I'm just asking I'm asking the genuine question: why is there a correlation? Why is there this trend? I'm genuinely curious. It's a good faith question. I'm not asking this question in a way as like a gotcha, or like saying, well, the liberals are the real communists, or the liberals are the communists. But I'm seeing a trend, and I just want to know what the explanation for it was. So that's just my final thought, is exactly that you said earlier as well. So you have the cringe on the liberal side, but then you also have the cringe on the more conservative side as well, where they take the arguments further to another extreme, where they're not as solid anymore.
Yeah. I think that wraps up that.
Yeah, that wraps it up nice. But you were talking still about the lockdown, dude. You're Odin Capone.
I am Odin Capone. I got you. Like, I'm actually on the last of my reserves because I've let those reserves run out. What is it you called it? Wotan's rule.
No, Wotan's rule, dude.
Oh, it's amazing. But anyway, I'm going to let you explain that one.
The Wotan's rule about the dress code.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So there's let's rather call it at Wotan's rule. So Wotan's rule is that whenever you go out on whatever social occasion with Wotan accompanying you, you will always by default look like a peasant. You have no say in this matter. This is just a fact of reality. And the sooner you make peace with this and accept it, the better. You'll just be a lot more happy because of it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Okay, so let's talk about that flex. Well, you said I think your dress sense is genetic.
So for context, Odin sent me a banknote with the 3 historic Chwana chiefs on it, and on the banknote they're sitting there flexing their suit and ties, and I just I remarked at Odin. I said, I think I have a suspicion that your dress sense is genetic.
I mean, even when they're dead, they stay flexing on niggas, right? They just flex all the time.
Yeah, dude. But yeah, like I also said, if you don't rock a classic cane in your old age, I'm going to be very disappointed.
Dude, I got that one. Like I said, I'm keeping it till I'm distinguished enough and I've earned it and I'm worthy of the man who passed it down to me, and then I'll start rocking it.
Right, but sure, do you just imagine those pictures where you're just standing there playing
flex,
shooting class,
flex. Yeah. Okay. So lockdown shit. By the way, I've been exercising every morning.
Great.
Yeah, doing a good 2-3K cycle or run or whatever, a couple of sit-ups and push-ups where I can. Excuse me. And I've got to be honest, as it's gone down, the people in except for like the people who are like 80 something in my area, the people in my area are pretty much just abandoning wearing masks and it's just now a thing of I'll just jog on the other side or ride on the other side of the road to you, and then we just don't care anymore. And let me contextualize this in the context of if you are like 18 to 35 and you're out in the middle of the day or in the early morning, lots of fresh air, sunshine, and you're on the other side of the road, I get why you wouldn't want to wear a mask. That's fine. Those of you on the more conservative side are saying, I'll never wear a mask because it makes me weak. Stop that. That is fucking dumb, cringe shit. And I've seen a lot of South African Twitter accounts that are quite popular do this. Stop that. You are giving the bad side ammo. Don't say shit like that. It's stupid and I fucking hate it.
And it's not, what does wearing a mask really impede you from doing?
Really, again, like I said, in that context, I won't. But if I'm going into a crowded store or indoors with somebody, yes, I will wear a mask. I don't get how this has become a politicized issue. Like either you don't wear a mask and you based as fuck, or you wear a mask and you're weak. I'm like, no, you idiots. There is actually a sort of contextual medium between the two, and it pisses me off endlessly.
It's not like wearing a mask robs you of any fundamental freedoms or it doesn't impede you from doing anything except maybe breathe at 100% capacity.
Yeah. And by the way, all the people making fun of people wearing masks in their car alone, yes, I get that it's silly. But for some of us who have very good quality masks, sometimes I'm in the car on 2 stops that are like 5 minutes apart. My mask fits pretty well and isn't that bad. And in those 5 minutes, I don't bother to take my mask off between those 5-minute stops when I get in my car and get out. Sorry. Yeah.
That's just my logic. It's like I put on my mask when I go out. It fits nicely. I'm not just going to throw it around and take it off, put it on, take it off, put it on. I'm just going to put it on, go outside, take it off when I get back home. That's easy, simple, no problem.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And that's all I've got to say on the pandemic. But I do have a lot to say on our US politics section.
Yeah, dude, I just wanted to say there's actually a lot of things going on across the salty pond.
Yes. Let's cross to the US news desk. This is like when we get more money. We'll add a soundbite that's like. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so where do you want to start with all of this?
Sure, dude. You can be the pioneer here, man. I'll just fall in.
All right, cool. So first of all, I really love that some of the governors, like Ron DeSantis and the governors of Texas and Georgia, who are absolutely slaughtered in the media for sort of opening parts of their states up. And I think even the governor of South Dakota, I don't know what her name is, got their comeuppance as more Democrat governors started opening up, like Jared Polis in Colorado or Gavin Newsom in certain parts. And what about the governor of Montana, Steve Bullock? You may remember him because he was one of 50 million Democrats running for the Democrat nomination. So, yeah, they got their comeuppance as those states started opening up again. And it's like, as it turns out, it's down to, and this is a good thing with the U.S. devolvement of power to a lower level, each governor can decide how and when and where to open up their states. And each governor has done so. And, I mean, if you look at states, I mean, South Dakota pretty much never closed up, and as far as I know, they have the same population density.
Comparing the economies of the states that didn't close as opposed to
exactly. South Dakota pretty much never, and it's got relatively, I believe, the same population density as Vermont, and it closed up, and they're doing the same in terms of infection. So what we're going to see the difference in is the economic fallout. But the two things I want to get on, well, there's a couple of things. First of all, is Andrew Cuomo, hero of the Republic, governor of New York. Sure, fine, whatever. Andrew Cuomo. I would like to know why nobody in the media is going in on Andrew Cuomo, putting in an executive governance order that even nursing patients that test positive for COVID must be sent back to nursing homes and put there instead of isolated. Because we knew very early on the biggest risk factor in this are the elderly and people in nursing homes because they're elderly and they have various medical complications. His order was, you have to send these people back to nursing homes. I would like to know why neither Andrew Cuomo nor Bill de Blasio are getting racked in the media for the fact that they kept the subways running until like this month, and they only started sanitizing the subways and sort of staggering the subways of New York in their schedule this month. They only started doing that this month. I would like to know why they're not getting racked for either of those things. I really would, because I am willing to believe that the media sometimes misses a spot, but you need to explain to me why it is only Republican governors who have gotten absolutely racked over the coals for opening up. The Jared Polis, the governor of Colorado, opened up exactly the same time as the governor of Georgia and the governor of Florida. Why is he not getting racked? I would like to know.
And I think you summed it up perfectly, man. I don't really have a lot to add to the analysis of the lockdowns, except the fact that I think it's going to be very interesting to compare the different states after this. I think it's going to be very eye-opening, and at the same time, not so much on the lockdown front in regards to protests, but some other protests going on there in the US at the moment.
Oh yeah, wait, hold on, one more. I'm going to do a quick President Trump versus Donnie from Queens segment. Okay, President Trump, the good part. Okay, two things. One, even though he says dumbass shit, he did actually devolve power down to the governors to deal with their states as they wish. Even though he's like, oh, I'll make them open up. That's good shit. And the other thing that he did well was when Joe Biden was like, if you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. And he tweeted out that coffin dance meme. Brilliant. Fantastic trolling. Fantastic. And by the way, Joe Biden just said his own Shapiro was right when he said Joe Biden just said the quiet part out loud. That's what he said. Like everybody knew this, that the Democrats sort of expect the black people to owe them their vote, and you're not. There was a lady who wrote the 1619 Project or whatever in the New York Times, which basically posits that America is based on slavery. She said there's a difference between politically black and racially black. That's her justification for Joe Biden's splurge. That's President Trump, like when he did that and the thing. Then there's Donnie from Queens, because he has to be fucking Donnie from Queens at some point, where he goes on this whole rant about Joe Scarborough, one of the senators and guys that's on morning news or whatever now. He's like, he goes on this endless tweet storm about how he's talking about how this dude probably murdered this one intern that died in his care the 6 years. Anyway, my point with that is, I get that a lot of people, and again, Shapiro is right on this, I get that a lot of people on Twitter who love this, love that he tweets this, but those are not the people that he has to impress. You're the president of the United States, dude. You need to fucking grow up at a certain point. Some of your trolling, great, but some of this shit is just, it's cringe. Like, no, don't do this, because you're going to be off-putting to like people in the center that you need to convince if you want to win. And that's my quick Donnie from Queens versus President Trump moment.
Right, and then we've also got that story of the protests, or rather riots at this stage, going on in the US. What was it? What was the guy's name that was
George Floyd? Well, and also Ahmed Arbery, who was
a contributing factor in the lead up to this. So this George Floyd was an American who was murdered by a cop. I think the evidence shows towards murder rather than this.
Well, there's the other cop just watching him, and I think there was another cop, like with the reverse angle, they've got his hands down, his back down, right. Everything. I'm like, how is this man a threat to you?
Yeah. So, but anyway, not to get tangled up in the details, this was another case of a civilian being killed by a police officer. But this just added to a pattern of these types of stories emerging. But firstly, I don't think we can and now a lot of protests and turned riots have broken out across Minneapolis. In what state is Minneapolis?
My US geography isn't that good.
I think it's Minnesota.
Jared, bring that up.
Yeah, Minneapolis is a major city in
Minnesota, which, by the way, votes blue.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you just Google Minneapolis, you just see all these pictures of places burning. So anyway, yeah, but I think a contributing factor here that people are missing is that I do think the lockdown has had a big effect here. People have been, the weather is warming up in the US. People have been sitting inside. A lot of people have lost their jobs. And I think that frustration has just been fuel to the fire in regards to what's going on here. But now we're seeing something very concerning happen, and that is that these protests develop or turn into riots. And then you see looting, you see burning down of buildings, destruction of infrastructure, people getting hurt. And I think that's the big part that has become just politicized again in the American politics, where Democrats call this protest and say it's fine, nothing. Or as Ian Omar said, our anger is justified. No, it's not. Your anger stops being justified when you start looting private citizens' property because you are angry.
Yeah, I liked the one Democrat representative who said, please stop burning or attacking the CNN building. They're on our side. That was just chef's kiss. Mwah, brilliant.
Dude, I'm gonna have to go check that out. I didn't see that tweet. But
yeah, I think it was Democrat senator or representative who's like, please stop burning or attacking the CNN building. They're on our side. I was like, chef's kiss. Wow, brilliant.
No, man, it's just my final thought there before you can add your thoughts, dude. It's just you're not helping. I don't care what your cause is, dude. If you start looting or burning down property of oaks that did absolutely fuck all to you, you're gonna have a hard time having me find any sympathies for your cause, no matter what your cause is, man. For example, let's take a cause that I feel very strongly about, and that's farm murders. If some protesters protesting farm murders are trying to bring awareness to it, burn down a police station, I'm not going to say, well, their anger was justified. Well, but no, it's unjustified in any context. You don't do that. It's not. You're discrediting the cause, whatever your cause is, and you're hurting private citizens. You're destroying private citizens' property, and you're not doing anything to help the issue that you care about. You're just alienating a bunch of people in regards to your cause, and you're destroying your own city. And I don't think there's any way of justifying it, no matter what the cause is that people are protesting.
Yeah, I mean, okay, well, first off, and I think this is something you and I probably both agree on, there is such a thing as police brutality is bad and evil and terrible. And also, private property rights are still a thing. You know,
exactly.
It's again, I'll have to agree with Ben Shapiro on this one, where he said, most people in the US are good and decent and happy people. Also, there are some racists, and also there are some jackasses. All of these things are true at the same time.
Yeah.
And again, police brutality is bad. I think everyone who's watched that video, who's seen this, if you are at this point saying, please give us more context, dude, you do not put your knee on somebody's neck for 9 fucking minutes. And Candace Owens, the cancer that she is like, there was some autopsy that proved that he also had a heart condition and cardiovascular. Well, Dr. Owens, did you know that the human neck has a spine in it, it has nervous tissue in it, and it has a shit ton of critical blood vessels and airways in it? Just throwing that out there. So again, my biggest thing with this, one of my biggest things, is a lot of the libertarian pages, some of them are taking the side of the looters. I'm like, why? Why the fuck are you taking the side of the looters in this? Yes, people can't, like you said,
society is not going to last long if people just devolve into anarchy where they can just loot each other's shops.
Exactly. This is you being lolbertarians. Like, as much as people, now you're being lolbertarians. Like,
the Libertarian Party, the official Libertarian Party, tweeted out with like hashtag riots and hashtag protests with like a little bit of a implication of supporting it. It's really strange stuff, dude.
Yeah. And yet they love tweeting out that picture during the Rodney King riots of the rooftop Korean grocery store owners defending their stores with guns. But yeah, the two things I'll say, one of the things I'll say is, one, there was a picture or a video of some I retweeted is at Paratus, a friend of the show, Gideon. He tweeted a thing, I think, of black and white people standing in front of stores with guns. We're defending this. And then there was another tweet of some black-owned stores as well, whatever, not that it matters. Guys just standing outside their stores with guns saying, no, you're not going to destroy my property. And I'm like, in both cases, fuck yeah. Like, regardless of race, like, fuck yeah, defend your private property with your weapons. This is part of why the Second Amendment exists. And the other thing I'll say is, like I said, like there is such a thing as nuance, and I also see that there's people who are now, because Donnie from Queens has to be Donnie from Queens, where he says he sent the National Guard in to protect this, or he sent whatever in, and then he said, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. And then somebody somewhere picked up that phrase and said, actually, this phrase is from the segregationist who said when the segregationist cop, I think from, I don't know what southern state, but he said...
That's exactly your theory about Donnie from Queens and President Trump on display.
Exactly. And they said... when the looting starts, the shooting starts, and they said, and to this point, and if he did take it from that quote, sure, we'll admit that. At this point in time, we have no evidence that he was actually quoting that person. And here's my take on this. Donnie from Queens is a man who openly brags about having written more books than he's ever read. I supremely doubt he was actually quoting the segregationist cop. I think he thought, he happened to, and because things happen across the world simultaneously over time, he happened to think, what rhymes with looting, shooting? I got National Guards coming in. I'll say, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. That's what I think happened. Or he looked up quotes saying looting and shooting, and he picked up that quote. I supremely doubt he looked up or knew who this man is and follows his ideology and has some fucking white segregationist shrine in his corner. I really doubt that's where he got it. I think he just thought it was a catchy phrase and he used it. But people are trying to represent this as if he had this as his master plan for his beloved segregationist cop that he follows. No, never attribute to fucking dumbassery. I mean, to malice what is just plain dumbassery.
Right. But yeah, man, regardless of where the fucking quote comes from, can we just agree on the fundamental that it's a reckless quote, it's a reckless thing to say? I don't think that should be something that the president tweets out during this time. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to say no. I think that was Donnie from Queens taking over like a Jekyll and Hyde situation.
Exactly. He's just being done. This is a God quote. I'm like, please stop doing this. Like, I know you're capable of being President Trump. Stop being Donnie from Queens right now. You do not, just stop doing it. It's kind of like Joe Biden, because Joe Biden, all he had to do to win this nomination was stay in a crypt, stay home, say nothing, and show up on election day. But he couldn't.
Yeah, but dude, something that I think maybe one of the sentiments that is communicated by that quote, and maybe you can say this is what he tried to say, is that the cops in that city have been told to stand down by the mayor. But as soon as the National Guard comes in, dude, they aren't going to treat you the same way as these cops are treating you. These guys they don't just get deployed for no reason. So I think, unfortunately, if this continues, the protesters are going to be in for a rude awakening if they, for example, loot a store or firebomb a store in front of the National Guard. That's not going to go down well, and I hope it doesn't happen.
I hope it doesn't happen either. And again, Minnesota being a fairly blue state, I believe, I don't think there's a large proliferation of firearm owners and people who know military tactics and outdoorsmanship and all that shit. So, I don't think it's going to go super well. But I will say one more thing is the other thing they don't show you. 2 tweets I saw was after the one day, a bunch of the community coming together to clear up one area that had been looted and destroyed and all that, like sweeping up broken glass and putting shit together. And the other was a tweet of a group of protesters who formed a human shield around one cop who had gotten separated from his group during the whole thing, and just trying to keep shit not from going totally sideways. And a group of protesters formed a human shield around him. I'm like, yeah, that's what we want to actually see,
No, exactly, man. But it's for me, it's just very simple, dude. I like valid protest. I like the idea of protest. I think you should be allowed to protest. But as soon as your protest turns into a riot or a mob or starts looting, dude, you're gonna find it very hard for me to, or make it very hard for me to sympathize with your cause, no matter what your cause is.
Yeah, I think so. And I do have one or two quick topics that I want to discuss about the local thing. And
yeah, man, go for it.
First of all, it's a shout out to the Kifness and his national anthem remix there. I don't know if you saw that tweet with the Kifness and his national anthem remix, and then the mayor of Ekurhuleni, he called him and because he called the Kifness a racist and all that, he called him and then he YouTubed that whole call.
Right.
Turns out from that YouTube video, the mayor of Ekurhuleni doesn't actually understand what satire is. Surprise, surprise. And I thought that was a pretty awesome move on the Kifness' part, even though I often disagree with him. In the last year, like I've agreed with him on so much stuff.
His Musi Mayamani track is a banger.
Yeah, that's true. Like, you see. And his I'm blue, can I have a Stevie blue and a pie? That's bangers. Speaking of Musi, by the way, and again, George Floyd is a relatively, it is an international issue, but it is still a relevant issue. But you could maybe just put all that energy into Colin's Koza. Just a thought, Musi. Like you could put all that energy into a local instance of police brutality if you want to be relevant.
Yeah.
Just
dude, that for me is just the biggest exposure of the South African Twitter is just double standards, where you have a South African murdered in cold blood by military forces, and you would rather be ranting on your feed for the entire day about an incident in America. This is not saying that there isn't an injustice that happened in that incident, but rather, I would rather like to see South Africans focus on something a bit more close to home, because that's a lot more concerning, and that's going to affect us directly.
Exactly. So when sees like blindness on there, it's just.
Did you see those soldiers that killed him were cleared on the basis that that is gender-based violence, that he was. What's the term?
Is that why they were clear?
No, wait, let me just check that. It's really bizarre stuff, dude.
Jamie, pull that up.
Yeah, I retweeted it today. I think. Let me just find it here. Maybe if I just type it in, I'll find it. Yeah, here we go. So, in breaking news, Colin's Koza died of gender inequality. So the board, having considered his findings, recommends that the cause of the incident was gender inequality and provocation, specifically the lack of respect towards female soldiers by two men. Therefore, program and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, Colin's Koza died because of gender inequality. There you have it.
Or maybe he just got murdered by some armed soldiers. An unarmed man got murdered by armed soldiers.
Get out of here with your Occam's razor.
Yeah, it's just, that is fucking horrific to me. That was horrific, and it's just terrible. And I don't even want to think about it too much more. I actually want to speak about the Kifness and his national anthem thing. Right. And I will say, I know. And I'll admit, I got into a bit of a thing with Jerm. I quoted his tweet because Jerm quoted the Kifness' tweet, and he said, "I don't know the national anthem, nor do I sing it." And I quoted his tweet and said, "Dude, I'm pretty sure you do and have sung it." I would wager a large sum of money that anyone under the age of 45 knows a fair chunk of the national anthem and sings it on a regular aspect. I get that Jerome was trying to support David / the Kifness, but that is such a cringe fucking tweet. And it's just so, I'm just like, dude, I get that you're trying to support him, but you're playing a little bit too hard to your audience.
I learned the national anthem when I was 5 at preschool.
And he's not much older than us. So I'm like, dude, I get that you are trying to support this guy, and we are on the same side. But this kind of tweet is just, it's a little try hard. That was my whole point.
Didn't everyone sing the national anthem in school assembly?
Exactly, and I'm pretty sure you and I watched in Capital Craft as we sang the national anthem together on that
one
brilliant
day that was South African that didn't know it.
That didn't stand up and sing that anthem and all that and sort of what is it again? We all I think everyone stood up in Capital Craft for the World Cup final and sang that anthem. So
yeah, did I remember
it was chills.
Not the Mandela effect.
Yeah,
use the pun.
But yeah, and that's not a slight at Jerm. I just thought that I don't absolutely hate Jerm. To be clear, guys, I just thought that was a particularly try-hard tweet. That's my point. Yeah, I'm not saying that Jerm is a bad guy. In fact, I think sometimes he says some things, even though without the nuance that I would have, that need to be said. But I think that was just, yeah. Anyway, the other local thing is that our boy Quinton, and I want to give a shout out to Quinton. He said, when will a South African podcast interview George Aiti? And if you don't know who he is, go in and Google him. He's great, sort of one of the great African economists and sociologists and socioeconomists and all that good jazz. Like, I would have him on the show any day of the week. By the way, I'd have the Kiffness on. By the way, just for that video you made, I'd have the Kiffness on any day of the week. But yeah, and he quoted that, Quinton said that, and then I went to sleep and I saw that in the morning, and then, I mean, you and I have discussed the concept of war games, so this fits into war games, and so I woke up in the morning and I saw all these tweet replies and all that, and I see this tweet stream, and Quinton says, when will a South African podcaster, YouTuber interview him, and he tagged, I think, me, the Man Patriot guys, a bunch of people, including Big Daddy Liberty. And Big Daddy Liberty said, "I've got him. I've got him on the." Or he said he's going to talk to him, or anything to that effect. And then some rando account. And for the record, I call rando accounts when they have like 200-300 followers and not a picture of them. For the record, if you do not have a picture of you on Twitter, I get that you're trying to protect your privacy and you don't have your name. I get that. But if you have 200-300 followers and you're just constantly making bad faith interactions, then I think you're a bit of a troll, and I call you a rando. And again, key point being, if you make bad faith interactions constantly. So this account sort of, I think it's called Muppet Hunter ZA, but his actual tag name now is Patel's some Muppet Poos or whatever. And his whole thing is, I hunt the Muppets in government who are dishonest. And he said, I'm glad Big Daddy Liberty's getting him. He's the only real guy who knows how to handle an interview. The rest of the people on the list are fakers. Well, Patel some Muppets Poos, I would like to say thank you. I would say Mr. McAfee and Mr. Mashaba would disagree with you who have been on our show. And
how do you have a fake interview with Herman Mashaba?
I called us, and it's not just me, like a bunch of shows. And Quinton, graceful guy that he is, shout out Quinton. He said, well, that's not true. I tagged everyone in this list for a reason. And this Muppet guy says, well, that's your opinion. Now, this is an example of war games. I didn't engage with this guy, and theoretically, I shouldn't, just by bringing him up on this interview or this show, I am actually engaging in him. But the reason I'm doing it is because if he does hear this, he now knows that I brought him up. And if he tweets about it, he has to implicitly admit that he listens to our fucking show. So there you go, Mapatus. You now have to, if you bring this up, admit that you listen to our show. And my whole point with this, again, as you said, war games, some things are better off where you just don't engage with them. But this one, I'm just for fun pointing out that you now have to implicitly admit that you listen to our show. And like you said, how do you have those fake interviews? So yeah, that was a pretty interesting experience for me.
Georgia just put a man in check.
That's I think I was like, okay, man. Now just admit that you just listened to our show to the end. That's why I'm mentioning it near the end. Like, just admit that you actually listen to the end. I think that's my last major South African thing to bring up.
Yeah, dude, and I think we had an excellent conversation tonight. I've got a few other things to do, but we filled at least an hour and a half now, which I think is excellent. So, yeah, dude, and thanks for the idea that we need to do a post-debate discussion. I always like the idea of touching on these types of ideas because I think specifically this debate between individualism and communitarianism is a very important one because, like I tweeted out today, I have a problem with the liberals just saying, putting all the blame on the Nats and then just riding out into the sunset scot-free.
And I actually agree with you.
Yeah, and this is not saying that the Nats didn't play a very huge role in regards to shaping modern South Africa today. I think you'd find it hard to find someone that argues against you in regards to the negative impact of that. But at the end of the day, we need to acknowledge that South Africa was and still is a project of liberalism, and it has failed in a lot of regards. Like I said, the one question I asked there is, because Herman Pretorius replied to my tweet and said, which one of these would you give up? And he named like private property and all these things. And I'm like, that's not the right question. The right question is these things were present at the beginning of the new South Africa, and yet we still ended up with a majoritarian ethno-nationalist government. So you need to ask yourself why that happened. Just food for thought. I don't want to throw out any of those liberal institutions like, for example, property rights and freedom of speech. I think they're excellent. My stance and Aaron Srutz's stance is that they've been insufficient to protect minorities and minority groups in this country and for putting proper checks and balances on the government, as we've seen now very much amplified during lockdown. So, but yeah, before I go on another conversational rant there, thank you very much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to join you on the show, on this prestigious institution of South Africa. I think we can call the No Script Show an institution.
I appreciate that.
Man, I would any time make time to come chat with you, and definitely make a plan again in the future. You need to come back on my show so we can have our history episode.
Yeah, and also, I'd like to further elaborate some of the AI items that I highlighted, and just further, I actually, again, shout out. I saw some comments like some dudes called me a professor. I'm not actually a professor, but thank you, and we'll chat soon.
I can understand the confusion.
I'm happy to come back on, and like I said, shout out to Q, shout out to Skank Hunt, and most importantly, shout out to you, and from my standpoint, you and Run, because obviously as my original co-host left the show, I don't think I can do this show as 60 minutes of me fucking ranting. And I don't think, more importantly, I don't think anybody would want to watch or listen to 60 minutes of me ranting. So I really appreciate you and Run filling in co-host spots where you can. And I guess on the off chance that anyone listening now has not heard you before or whatever, where can they find you? And let's plug this up.
All right, excellent, man. Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. I'm currently named In Lockdown Caracal, and I see you're named In Lockdown Wotan or Lockdown Wotan. So yeah, you can find me there on Twitter. You can find me on YouTube at Conscious Caracal, or you can type in Adams Fun Sale and you'll probably find me. And then also, I would just highly recommend to go watch our debates on the Politic podcast channel on YouTube, individualism versus communitarianism. I think you'd enjoy it if you enjoyed today's discussion. I'd like to hear people's thoughts. I've gotten such great feedback, so I think that's all I got to say.
Cool, man. And I think I'm done as well. So, Ernst, zum Essen, my friend, and I'll see you next time.
All right, mooi loop.